What's your language?
This is the special virus edition, so I want you to all step back from your monitors, 1 meter distance please, and we'll get started. Okay, maybe we don't have to go to that extent. But it's a subject on a lot of people's mind, and the whole emergence of this crisis has really affected the gun owning community. I think everyone can agree on that, and I don't know if I've mentioned it very often before, but I do work in a full-time position behind the gun counter. And even here in Canada, it's surprising what the reaction has been due to this situation we're in with all the quarantine and social distancing and things like that. The perspective you get from the gun counter is kind of unique though in some ways, because you actually get to see the sea change that has occurred in gun ownership and gun purchasing, and it calls into question some of the presumptions that we've had about firearms ownership and the general ethics surrounding it, and the niceties and the language that we use surrounding it. One of those pieces of language that I think we've all come across is the absolute almost disgust that people will express when somebody refers to a firearm as a weapon. It's not supposed to be called a weapon, you know. You don't say it's a, you say, oh, that's a nice weapon over there. No, you don't say it's a weapon. That's a firearm. That's not a weapon. And people are always very adamant about that. But you know, I've got a little bit of evidence that gives some grounding to the people who say weapons. I'll show that right now. Okay, so did you catch that? Here, I'll show that again. I'll circle the part that's in question. What's that up there? It says restricted weapons certificate. Well, that's actually what the Canadian government used to call these certificates. If you bought a handgun or some other restricted form of firearm, and I'm going to call them firearms, but really they were technically referred to as weapons. And it's kind of interesting how things have evolved, and through the course of this epidemic that we're going through right now. This is in the spring of 2020, just in case you're watching it later. Because we could almost go back to the case of FUDs, what people call FUDs, people who think of firearms only as being used for hunting and that sort of thing. There is a bit of a division in the shooting community, but I think we're all kind of on the same page when it comes to referring to firearms as firearms instead of weapons. But you know, if you want to be really honest about it, and I'm not trying to make any political statement or make reference to any particular company on this, this is just an observation just based on the facts that I see in front of me, that you can't deny that after this virus business started, that there was a huge surge in gun sales. And that wasn't a surge in sales of bolt-action hunting rifles. It was a surge in the sale of tactical shotguns, especially, and handguns. All this stuff has got nothing to do with hunting. And really people are quite upfront about it. They are basically buying guns for protection. Maybe a little more understandable in the context of the United States, but here in Canada we sort of consider ourselves above all that. It's like we're a very different country, and we rely on our system of laws to take care of us and work together, and you know, and really the legal system is very heavily skewed towards discouraging the use of firearms. You use a firearm to protect yourself from someone in Canada. You're the one that's going to go to jail, make no mistake about it, unless it's a very exceptional circumstance. So the whole notion of self-protection with firearms is quite different here, and it's being very subdued. And the reason I'm making this video is just to talk about the obvious. I mean, we're in a unique situation right now. Let's see what we can learn from that. Because what we're having happen, and maybe it's starting to tail off a little bit now, but the sales of guns just went through the roof. It's good in some ways, and it's bad in some ways. It's bad in certain ways in that even though in this country we have a licensing system that requires you to have taken a course. This is called the PAL, Possession and Acquisition License you have to obtain. And you have to sit through a full day course. Basically, it's a whole day course being taught about firearms, what cartridges are for what guns, and different types of ammunition, different types of actions. And you have guns in the course to manually manipulate and show that you can safely operate all of these guns. And only after you've passed that course, which includes a practical portion, only then do you get a license. But it's pretty clear that when you get a lot of, especially in light of recent events, that either the courses aren't being taught very well, maybe something sketchy is going on there, I don't know, or more likely really people just kind of, it comes in one side and it goes out the other, as far as they remember the stuff just long enough to pass the exam, and then since after the exam they don't actually make use of their PAL, they forget it. And it's very evident from the types of questions that we get at the gun counter when a new purchaser comes to buy a gun. So what I was beginning to say was, the downside to this surge in gun sales is that you're getting a lot of people who are very, very questionable whether they should really be handling a gun, because some of the questions are like, are you sure you passed the course? Well, they got the card right there, so you can't say no, right? But it does give me some discomfort, to be quite honest. And the reason, the thing that's driving those sales is very clearly it's protection purposes. Now, if a person is buying a gun in Canada to protect themselves from wildlife, or let's say from wildlife while camping, that sort of thing, it is perfectly legitimate, even in Canada, to sell them, a tactical shotgun. So really, we can't say no, because unless a person says, I'm planning to go out and shoot somebody, you basically, it's not your business to put them, cross-examine them or something like that. You're there to provide a service. So you got to sell these guns, and I'll tell you, the gun racks are just empty. And I'm confident to say right across Canada the same thing. The gun racks are empty as far as the tactical shotguns go, and anything that's self-protection wise, including restricted firearm or long rifles, the AR type platforms, and handguns, just those things are just flying off the shelves. So kind of not so good, because now there's all these guns out there. I mean, the government has done the best they can, I think. They've said, look, you got to pass a course before you can buy one of these guns. They passed the course. So they do have some minimal knowledge, but boy, they better be careful, because there's a lot of practice and muscle memory involved in using a gun safely and day to day. Never mind if you ever get in a stressful situation. So, downside. Upside, well, there's going to be a whole lot more gun owners in Canada. A lot more people who are first-time buyers of guns. A huge increase in that has occurred, I believe. And that's going to have an effect politically, because with politics, it's numbers that makes a big difference. So a lot of these people are going to maybe develop an interest, a longer term interest in guns now that they finally have one. And that's going to lead to more purchasing of memberships and national associations that are aimed at protecting rights of Canadian firearms owners. So that's a good thing. They may not be the most knowledgeable bunch, but they're there. So I'm glad to have the numbers, even though it's not the ideal way that we should have arrived at it. But we do sort of need a bit of a surge in exposure to handguns and rifles and shotguns and all that in our country, because lack of knowledge does lead to fear. And there's a lot of fear about firearms in Canada and many other countries. A lot of it is based on pure ignorance. And I think that for every new gun owner that has come along in the past month or so, they will be affecting other people who even don't own guns, but still they will influence their opinions, and we may get a little bit more of a nuanced understanding of the subject, that guns just don't go off by themselves and things like that, and that we're pretty responsible people. Because part of the problem is people don't even know what the laws are currently to restrict firearm use in Canada. So when they get asked on a survey, well, you think stronger gun laws would be a good idea, then people having no idea what the current laws are say, well, more laws are always a good thing, to control these things. But they don't even know what the current laws are. So this way, there's more people, a little bit more knowledge on the subject, and that's a good thing. Maybe even some politicians will get a license or two and buy a gun and start to get some hands-on experience. It may also translate into more people going afield and hunting. Now that they have a gun, well, now that part is done. So maybe we should make use of this thing and go duck hunting or goose hunting or something like that. And start getting their feet wet a little bit, start to develop an appreciation of the hunting experience firsthand, and that could lead to a lot of good things too. So I do like that. Another aspect of this is the bringing on board of spouses. I don't want to sound too sexist about it, but I think it's not that unusual for the man in the family to want to have a gun, and his wife saying, I am not having no guns in this house. And that basically puts a damper on it. There's not going to be any guns in that house because Mrs. does not approve. It could happen the other way around too, but I haven't seen it yet. So I have a suspicion, and I don't have proof on this, but I think also quite a few of these gun sales are not just, well, actually it is still related to self-protection, but a lot of these gun sales are from guys that have wanted a gun for a long time. Maybe they did a little hunting when they were younger, things like that, or a little bit of shooting, and they got married, and now they're with someone who I'm sure they love very much, but she doesn't like hunting, and she doesn't like guns around the house, especially if they have children, right? So along comes this situation that we're now in. People start to feel a little bit insecure, and it doesn't seem to take very much. It's not like there's people rioting in the streets or anything like that, but just that idea is starting to kind of tickle around inside their brain a little bit, and thinking, well, what if things really did get bad, What if we ran out of food and people can do some crazy things, And I think women tend to be a little bit more nervous about things like that. They're more kind of wanting to have a safe home to live in, and that could trigger a yes. So this guy who's been wanting to buy a gun for so long and being told no, all of a sudden she says, you know what, those guns you were wanting to buy, maybe you can go out and get that now. How about that? And then he hears that, and he's off to the gun store, and he's going to buy the guns that he always wanted. So I'm sure that that's a lot of the surge right there too, is finally we got the go ahead. Let's do it now before she changes her mind. And in fact, I see a lot of customers at the counter who appear to be like that. The wife is with them, and she's kind of there just observing while he's picking out his gun, but it's mainly for him. But I don't want to make it too one-sided. There's a lot of women who are very interested in guns too, and they're very skilled and knowledgeable. You got to be careful that you don't make assumptions. There's a lot of excellent women hunters out there. My wife is one of them, so I ought to know that. And they're very knowledgeable of guns, so don't talk down to them. But you know, we're kind of I'm dealing sort of in generalities to some extent here, right? Just to get the point across. There is a lot of sudden agreement that has occurred, I think, within couples about this whole gun question. So there you get part of your rise in gun ownership. And once that happens, that leads to other things. You know, maybe the wife wants the husband to become proficient in using his gun, and he has more incentive to himself, feeling that yeah, I really don't know much about using this gun, and join a shooting range. Join a shooting range, you start to get to know people. People who are shooters are great people. Socially, it's a great thing. My wife and I have enjoyed that for many years. It's some of the best people we've met are on shooting ranges. So, you know, once you get into that milieu, then you start to really appreciate it even more. And I mean, this could lead to a lot of good things. So I just wanted to kind of put those thoughts out there. You know, we're in a tough situation right now. I don't think it's going to last. We do have to make every effort we can to social distance. You know, wear those masks if you need to. And, you know, don't go to the gun stores unless you really have to. Because, well, I think they're basically all shut down by the time I'm filming this now. So it's going to be store-to-door to customer pickup type of deal now. But try to keep yourself distanced from people, and slow down the spread of the virus at the very least, because really at the bottom of it, we're trying to flatten out that curve. Right? We don't want to have all of a sudden everybody getting sick at one time and the medical system gets overloaded. The doctors I've talked to are very concerned about that thing, that they just can't handle the sudden surge. Maybe over a period we will wind up getting the same number of infections, but if they didn't occur all in the same week or two, that would be very, very helpful, and it would help to save a lot of lives. Not only saving the lives of the people that are infected with the virus, but also the lives of people who normally require medical care as well, who need certain treatments that are very vital to their to continuing to live. So overloading the medical system has dire consequences, very serious ones. So let's keep that in mind, and I like to think that God has His plan in all things like this. You know, there's tragedies that have been occurring all through history, and the Christian view is that God allows these things to happen to shake us up a little bit, because we get so involved in our day-to-day concerns that sometimes we don't stop to think about the big picture and in our relationship with our Creator. So this time might be a good time to begin reflecting on things like that, and maybe spend a little more time reading and studying and doing some things that you weren't able to do during the busy course of your life. Turn something that's a bad thing into a good thing if you can. So until then, thank you for watching. I hope you do subscribe to the channel if you can, and click the bell so you get notifications. Your subscriptions really help a lot to keep this channel going. And I'd like to just wish you God bless from the Way to Native Chronicles.